Christian Lundgaard. Christian Lundgaard started his single-seater career at 15 years old, where he competed in the SMP and Spanish F4 series and won them both by a landslide. Therefore, he was signed to the Renault Academy and came second in the Formula Renault Euro Cup. He then joined ART for his only season in F3 to come 6th before his F2 stint of 2 years. In his first year he came 7th, and in his second he came 12th, the lowest he'd ever placed in a single-seater series, and F1 dreams started to peter out as fellow Alpine junior Oscar Piastri took the title, and Alpine had no free seats for any junior. Lundgaard got a test in a single race in 2021 in IndyCar, and impressed so much that he got a full-time ride with RLL, where he would go on to get a win in Toronto in 2023, and secured a move to Aero McLaren for 2025. Since then, Lundgaard has done extremely well this year and currently sits 4th in the standings, and winning 2 races already this year. But his future is uncertain, as McLaren has gone a different direction with their driver lineup, and Lundgaard currently does not have a seat for next year, despite being one of the most successful drivers in the series at this very moment. Theo Pourchaire. Teddy Porkchops is one of the few to win the F2 title, yet one of the few to not find a stable IndyCar seat, and he's vacated the series entirely. After climbing the ranks at an extremely young age, he became the youngest F2 race winner, at the time 17 years old, which now has been broken by Arvid Lindblad. Regardless, he was competing near the top in all 3 of his F2 seasons, coming 5th, 2nd, and 1st. The main argument against Pourchaire is that he took 3 years to win the title, but that can be dismissed when you realize that in his 3rd year where he did win, he was still only 19 years of age. Pourchaire also spearheaded the Sauber Driver Academy, sticking with them for 6 years across his career, but he never got a ride with them due to the timing of the buyout with Audi cooking right as Pourchaire was ready for F1. He raced in Super Formula for 2024, but withdrew 1 race into the championship to compete with Aero McLaren, and was signed for the remainder of the season. But only 5 races in, he was released for Nolan Siegel, and got 1 appearance after release for an injured Alex Rossi. Since being ousted from the series, he's been prominent in the World Endurance Championship with Peugeot, but still remains a mystery with heights that he could have reached in single-seaters. Dennis Hauger. Dennis Hauger has competed in the European Feeder Series since 2018, and has won titles in Italian F4 and F3. Hauger had signed onto the Red Bull Junior program in 2017, and competed sporting their liveries all the way until 2023. He tore up F3 in his 2nd season in the series, and won with 4 wins and looked destined for an eventual seat in F1, but the results never translated in F2. He was by no means bad and scored a win in each of his years, but never finished above 8th in the standings. From there, Hauger shifted his focus to Indy NXT in 2025, and raced with Andretti Global, turning down offers for F2 in the process. He took pole in his first race weekend and took the championship as a rookie. Since then, he's gotten his ride at Dale Coyne with the partnership with Andretti, and leads this year's Rookie of the Year standings. Earlier in the year, he was rumored for a move to Andretti for 2027, but as Marcus Ericsson's performances have gotten stronger, the move looks less likely, and Hauger is rumored to cut ties with Andretti, but no official news has broke quite yet. Mick Schumacher. Mick Schumacher did do well in F2, but he's the only driver I'll mention here that competed in F1. Mick karted from a young age under his mother's maiden name to attract less attention from his last name, and did incredibly well in single-seater categories. He came 2nd in both the Italian and ADAC F4 championships, and won the title in F3 and F2, both in his 2nd year in the series, under the Ferrari Academy. He then made his F1 debut with Haas in 2021, where the car was so slow that he never really got any wheel-to-wheel action, and in his 2nd year, he made a big jump scoring points and having standout performances in Silverstone and Austria, but eventually, he was dropped in favor of a much more consistent Nico Hülkenberg, who was more favorable for a financially struggling team. And Mick was held under extreme pressure for being the son of the great Michael Schumacher. Since then, Mick has served as a reserve driver for 4 different teams in F1 and competed in the World Endurance Championship with Alpine, before regaining the itch for single-seaters and joining IndyCar at the start of this year. This year has been slow, but if it follows his patterns of past records, a 2nd-year stint can have a huge jump in performance. But his future is uncertain, as his team at RLL have sold 1 charter to Dreyer and Rainbolt, and Schumacher is the only driver at the team not contracted for 2027, so he's currently seeking a team for next year. Robert Shwartzman. Robert Shwartzman is most remembered by his pole position at the 2025 Indy 500. but he was very close to a seat in F1 at one point. Shwartzman was consistent in all of the junior categories up until F3, where he took the title, but the jump to F2 came with Prema and he did well there as well. In 2020, he came 4th, only behind Mick Schumacher, his future teammate Callum Ilott, and Yuki Tsunoda. In 2021, he came 2nd, only behind Oscar Piastri, and was signed as a test driver for Ferrari, then later dropped from the academy and given a reserve driver role. While being a reserve, he got a test in IndyCar with Ganassi in 2023, but nothing materialized from it, so Shwartzman took up endurance racing before reuniting with his former team Prema for their IndyCar start. Other than the 500 pole, nothing crazy really occurred, and due to the financial collapse of Prema, Shwartzman is not driving this year, and is still technically under contract for them in the case of a comeback. But who knows? We might see him again in IndyCar, or we might not. No one really knows. Callum Ilott. Callum Ilott was Shwartzman's teammate at Prema, but he had experience in the series prior to Prema. Ilott had an incredibly successful karting career, but didn't really win much in single-seaters, but rather consistently performed well to level up series by series. But his strongest result came in the higher series. A 3rd in GP3 in 2018, and a 2nd in 2020 F2, but other than test and reserve roles for Sauber, Haas, and Ferrari, he never really made a real bid for an F1 seat. As a result, Ilott became the sole driver for the new full-time team Juncos-Hollinger when they joined IndyCar, and stuck around as they expanded. In 2025, he was dropped, but made a few appearances for McLaren while they were figuring out the Malukas, Pourchaire, Siegel situation. And he raced for Jota and WEC as well. He signed for Prema in 2025, and he has gone down the same situation as Shwartzman, with the Prema downfall after, but he currently races in IMSA and could rejoin Indy in the future if an opportunity arises. Marcus Armstrong. Marcus Armstrong lingered in the European feeder series since 2015, when he moved from New Zealand to pursue racing, and he competed as a Ferrari Academy driver from 2016 until 2021. After winning Italian F4 and coming 2nd in F3 in 2019, he made his way to F2. Despite popular belief, Armstrong actually was massively funded by New Zealand automotive retail network Armstrongs, which, if not obvious enough, is a family business owned by his dad, and can be seen on the side of his F2 car. Despite 3 13th place finishes in F2, Armstrong had wins, talent, and money, and came to the USA in 2023. And although technically a pay driver when his IndyCar career began at Ganassi, his results have been solid, so it doesn't make you question whether or not money is a big factor. Since joining the series, he has proved to be incredibly competitive, and has gotten really close to wins at this year's Indy 500 and Road America, where he had an engine failure while leading with 3 laps to go. Anyways, Armstrong has now re-signed with Meyer Shank to drive the 60 car, and will likely be their dynasty driver going forward, following the departure of Felix Rosenqvist. Santino Ferrucci. Santino Ferrucci had a much more unorthodox path to IndyCar through F2 due to his American origin and moved to and back from Europe. In F3, he was nothing really special, but did well enough to move to GP3 where he ended the season 12th, and moved to F2 halfway through 2017 as a Haas test driver. Ferrucci's F2 campaign was filled with controversy, with the first issue being deliberate contact with his teammate Arjun Maini, then deliberately pushing him off track in another instance, being on his phone while in the car, and attempting to put political slogans on his car, which is completely against the FIA policies. Ferrucci was fired by his F2 team Trident for behavioral issues and failure to pay contractually bound money, and Ferrucci was later made to pay that money in a court case. Since, Ferrucci has found a home in IndyCar racing for Dale Coyne, Rahal Letterman Lanigan, Dreyer Rainbolt, Juncos-Hollinger, and AJ Foyt. He has 1 pole position to his name, 3 podiums, and at the moment is unsigned for the 2027 season. Caio Collet. Caio Collet's part in this is a bit different because he never actually went to F2, but instead he spent 3 years in F3. Collet competed in the UAE and French F4 series as well as Formula Renault Eurocup prior to F3, and he was part of the Renault/Alpine Academy. With 3 9th place finishes in his 3 F3 seasons, Collet did not see a future in F1 and pivoted to Indy NXT with HMD Motorsports, starting in 2024. Collet finished as the Rookie of the Year in 2024 and runner-up in 2025 only behind Dennis Hauger, the same as the current Rookie of the Year standings in IndyCar this year. After a guest appearance in Formula E, he made his way to IndyCar this year only 30 days after his first test with Foyt, and he had a standout performance at this year's Indy 500 alongside a lot of funds being provided by sponsors due to him being the only Brazilian driver in the series at this point in time, making him highly sought after and the favorite for a seat next year with Meyershank Racing.